Hello and welcome to the Speak Your Mind podcast. My name is Tyler Smith. Joined with me, as always, is my boy Riley Sheehan. We are powered by Torch Pro. Okay, Riles, you've had many arena hot dogs in your life. You've had many glizzies, as they call it now. Imagine your ideal condiment station. You're feeling good. You go up there. Mom gives you $5. You get some hot dogs, maybe a candy bag, and you got your ideal condiment station. What are you chucking on that glizzy?
Well, first of all, it's presumptuous of you to say that I've had many arena hot dogs. I'm a National Hockey League player. I got to keep a clean diet.
Okay.
But if this situation actually happened, I'm going ketchup, mustard, relish, 100%, all three. I'd probably throw some cheese on there, and I think I'm cutting it there. I think I'm just going kind of like classic ketchup, mustard, relish. Not a big onion guy. Yeah, I'm just keeping it simple. Right so there, ketchup, mustard, relish, and ketchup, mustard, relish, and a little cheese. Shredded cheese.
You are dripping in sauce.
Yeah, I'd go heavier ketchup, light mustard, and then decent dose of relish. I'm a big ketchup guy. I'm a huge ketchup guy.
Yeah. I love ketchup. Okay, well, it's ketchup, mustard, it's bacon bits, it's cheese, and
bits.
Yes. Have you maybe just a little bit of sauerkraut. I don't know possibly maybe a little kimchi, something to switch it up a little bit. Okay. But anyways, I mean, talk about arenas. Talk about how many arenas this amazing guest that we just had on has been in. Ray Ferraro is the name. And I think for many Canadians listening, the amount of times you've sat around your living room watching the World Juniors, listening to Ray Ferraro call the games and I'm just starting to think about how many World Juniors I watch with my family, whether it's the Taves shootout, whether it's the Eberle tying goal. I mean, there's been so many across. It's insane to think about. But I think we mainly brought Ray on today to talk about, the article that he just wrote. He wrote a pretty profound article on his decision to step away from TSN, his decision to, take a step back a little bit in his life and, to talk about the way that things have changed, his outlook, his compassion, his empathy. It was just, like I said, I've been a fan of Ray since I can remember. And it was pretty amazing to be able to just have this candid conversation with Ray about that article, about his life now.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of peg someone based off what you see on TV. And obviously Ray had a hell of a career. 18 years playing in the NHL is absolutely unbelievable. But when the article came out, I just found it super admirable and admirable right there. Yeah. Super admirable. And it was just an awesome conversation because he spoke about so many things that you wouldn't sort of see when he's on TV and when he's talking about hockey, and so many relatable things, I think, for a lot of people. And he just seemed at peace and talked about his flaws and how he gets through them, and just a lot of good information to take in. And we had a lot of fun. So we got to give Landon a shout out. Landon, his son, who I played with, who's an amazing guy. We got to give him a shout out for hooking us up to talk to his dad. And we had a great time with this episode.
And Speak Your Mind fam, listen up. I know y'all got Instagram, and I know that you all like tunes. And let me tell you, head on over to Speak Your Mind Instagram and watch me kick Riley's ass at New Tune Tuesday pretty much almost every week. I don't know, like his picks are kind of baloney sometimes, but we like to keep it fun. We like to keep, you guys engaged. We like to keep it, keep it light. And we hope that you guys will tune into that. And also, before we dive into today's interview, we wanted to highlight that Premera Blue Cross is a proud sponsor of Speak Your Mind. 1 in 5 people deal with mental health conditions every year. So no matter who you are, it's okay to ask for help. Premera Blue Cross, always in your corner. Now let's jump into the conversation.
All right, well, let's jump into it. I mean,
sure.
I sent you the text saying how powerful I thought that article was. when that came out and everything you said. I think for me, it was just really relatable, like kind of stuff that I've been going through, especially kind of as my career maybe as we've signed these 1-year deals, trying to figure out what's next. And I just thought a lot of the stuff you said was really relatable. So we're going to start just, I appreciate you coming out with that, because I think a lot of other people can kind of, even my old man, he commented to me, he said he loved your presence always as an analyst, and your no bullshit and your accuracy with the game, obviously. But even now, he's got that much more respect for you coming out with that article. So I think you hit a lot of people's hearts. But I mean, we're just going to start. I think 2002, you retired from the game and you jumped right into hockey. I think we want to talk kind of about your transition. When you look back at it, you didn't take a break. You went right from playing 20 seasons,
18
seasons, and then jumped right into broadcasting. What was that transition like?
I was so unbelievably lucky because, and you know, at the time, of course, you don't think about it, but you know, like there'll be an event that happens in your life and you don't realize how significant it is until like way, way, way later. Not at the time, but like, so I signed a free agent contract in 1995 with the Rangers, biggest contract I ever signed, left the Islanders, 4-year deal. I scored 25 goals in 54 games. And then I got traded to LA. Like I was totally blindsided. It was brutal. And so I get to LA. About 2 weeks later, my agent gets a call from a guy at ESPN, and he says, the Kings aren't going to make the playoffs. Would Ray be interested in doing some TV work? So he called me up and he said, would you be interested? And I'm like, geez, I don't know. I'm still playing and I'm not planning to retire. And so I went there and it went well, I guess, because they invited me back the next year. So the crazy part is going to LA, our team was in a total full rebuild. And I didn't realize that was going to open the door to a post career. Like I just had no idea. And so I retired and, my body had just said, uncle, I just got divorced. And so my ex-wife was going to move to Vancouver with the kids, who at the time Matt was 13 and Landon was 10. So wherever she was going, I was going because of the boys. And so I get to Vancouver. I got no idea what I'm going to do. Like I've done the broadcasting thing and I think I'm going to do that, but I'd kind of like to coach, I think, too. And so I don't really have a plan. And then like out of the blue, I get a call from Sportsnet and they said, hey, Craig Simpson is going to leave Sportsnet. He's going to go coach with the Oilers. We'd like you to come in and audition for the color job. I said, well, I live in Vancouver. And they're like, yeah, you could fly in and out. That wouldn't be a problem for the games. And so I was like, okay, so I go audition. I don't even know what I'm doing. I've never done games before. And I do the audition. They're like, yeah, we'd like to hire you. I mean, I didn't have an agent. I mean, whatever they offered, I was like, yeah, sure, I get. I had no idea. And so now all of a sudden, like I retired in May when I was playing for St. Louis. We lost in the playoffs. I retired in May and I started working in October. And so like I didn't take a breath. It was kind of like, you guys know, like the hockey season's got its own rhythm, right? And so like late August, you start feeling like, oh, it's kind of getting into hockey season again. And then camps open. And then all of a sudden I was traveling again. And that first week of the season, Cammie and I, my wife, but at the time, we were just starting to see each other. And we went to a Canucks game. And I was not prepared for what I was going to feel when that game started. Like the first game I'd been to as a retired player, and the guys came out of the tunnel, the music's going, the lights are going, and it hit me like I'm never doing this again. And I started to cry. Like it was totally overwhelming. And so the crazy part is like I had this thing that I was transitioning to, right? Like I knew now I was hired. I was going to be a TV analyst, and I was still run over with emotion. So like for the guys that are coming to the end of the road and they don't know what to do. I can see where it's just totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like
What were
totally
those?
overwhelming.
What were those like emotions when you watched the guys come out? Like you said, it was just like a roller coaster. But what was it?
Riley, it was like everything I've done my whole life is over.
Right.
It's done. Like from the time I got on the ice to, as a little kid, I was like 5 or 6 or whatever. I don't know if kids think this way, but like I never thought ever that I was going to do anything else but play in the NHL. Like my mom used to keep the scrapbook, right? We had 4 boys in our family and everybody had a scrapbook, and it was your teacher's name and your best friend and, your favorite food, whatever, and what I'm going to be when I grow up. And so in 6-year-old handwriting, it says NHL player. Like I never thought, totally, of course, oblivious to how hard it was going to be and all that stuff. I just was going to do it. And then it was over. And I felt kind of lost, really. Here's the other thing is like, for me, my personality is like, I fought everybody all the time.
We read that a couple of times.
Even if they don't know I was fighting them, right? Like I was still like, I had to win and I had to, then you retire and you're like, well, who am I fighting? Like the guy at Starbucks line or the guy that was cutting me off in traffic or that I cut off in traffic? Like it was like you have no outlet for it. None. Yeah. And so the things that I think this is a real issue for super competitive people is that when you change careers, there's no outlet for that. And you've got all this stuff pent up inside you. And how do you deal with it? And like, honestly, guys, I've been traveling. I turned pro in September of 1984, and I've been traveling ever since.
Yeah.
Every hockey season.
Crazy. Yeah.
And so where does the outlet go? Where's the energy go? You try and work out and you're like, the only reason you work out is so you don't get fat. I mean, when you're retired, like I look at the weights now and I'm like, God, they look so heavy. I don't want to pick that up. I'll go down to this end of the rack and lift the light stuff. But even that, you're like, yeah, I guess it's a workout. It's, like it's not, it's just not the same. And that's been really, really, really hard for decades for me to deal with.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, it's completely different circumstances. Obviously, like you're 18 years in the NHL, an incredible career. I think you consistently defied the expectations, like you said multiple times in your article. I had to prove that I was fast enough, and just because I was small, all this and all that. And I think you obviously proved everything like that. And I only played 1 year in Humboldt, and then obviously, but when I made the decision to leave, I think it was the exact same thing. It's just, you just feel lost and you just like, where's my outlet now? Like, how do I move forward? And it's almost like we've had a couple guests on where, you losing hockey, like playing hockey is grief. I mean, you're losing something that has been your whole life. And so my kind of question is, go back to the, proving yourself and continuing to defy these expectations. Once you got into that new outlet of media, I mean, how did that mindset kind of shift for you? Because obviously it's still the same similar routine, but how did you kind of shift your mindset to like, okay, this is what I got to do now? And you said you're very competitive. So how did you kind of shift it to like, okay, I'm not constantly competing against other people every night, but I want to make sure that obviously I'm doing my best for everybody else that's listening?
I still thought I was competing.
Yeah.
Like I was like, if I ask a few guys, like, Darren Pang's a great story. So he's literally 5'4.5". Like, Panger played a goal in the NHL at 5'4.5". Like, can you imagine how competitive he had to be? Like, or how many times people looked at him and they're like, really, you're going to be the goalie? And he was good enough to play in the NHL. He rips up his knee. He's got nothing. Like, in those days, like, we were making no money. He had played 27 games in the NHL. He's married. he is just about to have a baby. He's got no job. He's got and so Panger, he's just like this energetic soul. And he ended up getting into broadcasting. He's gone on. He's had a terrific career. So I called him and I'm like, what do you do? I'm going to be broadcasting games. I don't really know how to do it. And so he gave me a couple little things to do, to look at. Here's where you read. Here's where it's not like now where, you just open the internet and browse around. And now there's articles you can find, good or bad. You can find them anywhere. So I started to build like my own routine. But where it got problematic is that, okay, so I'm doing the Oilers. Say the Oilers are playing Pittsburgh on Thursday. I think I've got to watch the Penguins game, like start to finish, on Friday, Sunday, and Tuesday. So I don't miss anything before I get there. And then I get to the rink and you talk to coaches and as many players as you can find. And well, that's for one game. I was doing 50 per year. And so I don't know how Cami honestly was like, she must have been like, you got it. Like, you got enough information, but I never did. Like I never did. And so I poured the same energy into my broadcasting. And again, there's just not the outlet for it though. Like the physical part of it was not the outlet. The Vancouver Canucks have a couple of broadcasters. John Shorthouse does play-by-play, and Dan Murphy's the host, and they're both really good friends. We play lots of golf together. So a number of years ago, we're playing, and I'm not having a very good day, and I hit a ball out of bounds on 12 at our course, and I make a double bogey, and we're walking off the green, and I said to them, I go, it's right about here I would take a bad slashing penalty. Like right about here. I was like just furious, like, and there's no one to be furious with. I'm the dummy that hit it out of bounds, right? And so I'm telling you, like, I don't think I empathized as much with the struggle other people have trying to, like, I was still in the game I love. And I don't think I understood that sometimes there's a difference between people doing a job, and Gord Miller taught me this, people doing a job and people in a career. Like sometimes you're doing your thing because that's what you got to do. You don't love it, but it's a way to provide for yourself and your family. And well, I got to keep going to the rink. Like when I look back at it, I'm like, why did I always have this anxiety and angst? And it took me, honestly, guys, it took me 15 years after I retired to come to a place that was completely different.
What caused that? I think one of my main questions, like I read, like you're quoted talking about your situation and like you just weren't happy with what was going on. Like what was that light bulb moment where was it a light bulb moment, or was it kind of just like an evolution of self-realization where you're like, it caused your cut back when like taking some steps back from work and opening up your schedule, but like what caused you to take those steps and actually have the confidence and courage to act on it, if you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, the stepping back from work was almost the last step. Mm-hmm. In that continuum, that's like the last step of it. I mean, hopefully there's a long road still, and I got lots of journey to go. But the step back from work was the realization that the way I was living was just not. It was not anything I was comfortable with anymore. I could see like I used to say to Cami, so we have, I've got my older boys are 34 and 31 and 15 and 12. And so the 15-year-old's born, and we got, and you're going through that first year, which is just, there's no sleep, and every parent's got the same thing.
I'm going through it right now, Ray.
Isn't it, Riley? Isn't it amazing when you go, wow, that was a good sleep last night. You realize it was 5 hours, and you're like, and you're like, wow, the baby slept for 5 hours. It's amazing. So Cami has a far different way of doing things than I would. And I would say to her, look, I've been doing this for 15 years already. I'd been a parent. Or 18 years, whatever it was. I always felt like my way had to be the right way. Then over the course of time, I'm realizing, you know what, she is so much better at this than me. Or just her way. I'd be everything was so, my energy. She used to say, you have this energy that, I would lash out and then I'm fine because I've lashed out, and everybody else is like, what the hell was that? Yeah. But I'm fine. And she's like, you leave this energy behind. And, as Matt's getting older, he's like, Dad, it's not that big a deal. And I'd be like, yeah, but, and so it was a little bit of that. And, getting older and going I don't want to be like that for my younger guys. And then it just nothing there wasn't one moment, but it kept leading towards, I need to make a change, because I was starting to become disappointed in myself, in the way I would interact with somebody, even the way I'd interact with Cami, the way we'd argue. It used to piss me off. Almost every disagreement we had, I would say sorry. Mm-hmm. And it bothered me. I'm like, Jesus, I'm saying sorry all the time. Why am I saying sorry? Maybe my way needs to be readjusted. Maybe I need to find a different way. So in 2018, in July, we're at a soccer tournament in Riley, who's our 15-year-old. We're at a soccer tournament. It's called the Gothia Cup in Gothenburg, Sweden. It's this crazy worldwide soccer tournament. I don't even know how many teams there are, 100 and something or other. It's an amazing event. So one of the players on our team, his dad is just the calmest guy. He's just the building falls around and he down around him, and he's like, so we're having a coffee, and I just asked him, I'm like, why are you like this? How are you like this? I was enthralled and envious of him, because he's an amazing guy. Mm-hmm. And so kind of tells me his story a little bit, tells me a little bit about meditation, tells me a little bit about stepping away from what gives you the most angst and kind of looking at it from a bigger picture instead of standing right in the middle of it.
Yep.
And so I went back home that night, and he told me about this guided meditation app. It's called the Calm app. It's a very popular app. And so I downloaded it and I started. And I'm like, this, I can't believe how I felt. I felt like I had just taken a nap and woke up. In that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I feel great. Well, of course that wears off, and you got to keep, and then I do it for a while and stop for a while. And so today is the 28th of October. So I just happened to notice this today. I do it in the morning. Today was 399 days in a row.
Wow.
That's impressive. I can't start the day. I feel wrong. I'm like, something's off. And so from my friend, he gave me a path to follow. And part of it became, from that path, I started to see a psychologist, and I talk with her once every couple of weeks. I just saw her yesterday, and she has this amazing phrase, because I think it fits me really well, is she said, when you have a worry and a stress, you're pulling the rope, and you've got this rope pulled so tight because you don't want to drop it. She's like, sometimes you just got to let the rope go. I'm terrible at that. Terrible. Well, I've started to incorporate it into my life. And it all kind of if you can take the first step and believe that somewhere down that road, those steps matter, I think you can really make a difference, because when I stopped, I was like, I started and then I stopped and I started and I stopped. I'm like, well, I still feel the same. Well, I tried it 6 days. It's like anything, right? Like, people go to the gym for a week and they're not in great shape, so they quit.
Yeah.
And so this is, the more I worked on me, it's maybe selfish, I guess, but the better I became for Cami and the boys. And all four of them, Matt, Landon, Riley, and Reese. And that really became my driving force. I want to be better for them.
Do you think, sorry, I'm going to, Ty, you probably got a question too, but this one I think just fits. Adding these like modalities or habits and like the meditation and being kind of more cognizant of like what's going on inside you, like, do you think that would have helped you during your playing career? Or do you think like that fire and that drive inside of you to be competitive? And like, I always find it interesting. I think there's a lot of successful athletes are successful because they're so driven and they'll do anything to achieve what they have to. But there's also a lot of athletes that are so like grounded and so dialed into what they're feeling and open, and they do like the meditation stuff. It's kind of like, I don't know, like, do you think if you had these habits earlier in your career, you would have had the same success as a player, even as a broadcaster too?
That's a really, really interesting question, because
or is there a balance of both? Like,
I think the balance is the balance is the best way. I think the balance is incredibly hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys know, when you leave the rink, and you don't need anybody else to tell you whether you've played a good game or a bad game, right? You know, somebody comes up to you and says good game, and you're like, but because right? You're like, it wasn't that good. And so the balance would be nice to have when things were going particularly poorly.
Yeah.
Because that's when I turned the fight from fighting everybody else, and I then fought myself. Like I'd miss the net in practice, and I'd smash my stick on the boards. And one of the guys would always say, the coach hasn't noticed you missed the net till you smashed your stick on the boards. And then he's like, oh, he must have missed the net, because they're watching 100 guys out there, right? Yeah. So Cami said, and in the article she talks about my strength as a player was also my weakness.
Right.
And so I really do think it's a tough balance, but I think, and also guys, it's like a lot of things where we can't really apply 2022 standards and the way we look at things back to 1990. Yeah. Like, nobody was talking about mental health in 1990. Even had I been seeing a psychologist in 1990, I would have never told anybody.
Yeah.
Now if somebody says to me, well, you've seen a psychologist, what do you do? I don't really care what they think. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be better for myself, but for the people around me too. Back then you would have never said anything. Not a chance. So here's the thing. If I had this mindset, I would have known, I think, the competitive part was super important, but there's more. There is more, because at the time it was my game, my nap, my time to eat, me. And the world doesn't work like that. And the quicker, I wish I would have got to this much earlier. I really do.
Yeah. I think Riley, we've had that conversation quite a bit. Riley can, I think, relate to that last part quite a bit. But I want to go back to steps. I think I don't want to single out men as in this conversation, obviously. But I think for men, sometimes that first step is the hardest part, because we all have this misconception that, okay, there's a right or wrong way to do this. And I don't know if you had the same kind of mindset, but I always thought that there's a correct way to go about this. When you're finally taking this step and making that decision to take care of yourself, which you haven't fully done mentally or emotionally over the years, taking that first step does require a lot of weird strength that you probably never used before. I want to touch on talk us through that process of actually getting to that first step, and then also being able to appreciate the little steps along the way, the little steps of making that psychology appointment, making those little pieces in your life, just come together. Talk about that process, because I know it's not easy. And I know I've talked a lot with people around me where it's like, that's the toughest thing. I always get the question, how do you push somebody to take that first step? How do you do it? So is there anything you can kind of touch on with that?
Yeah, yes. First of all, you can push somebody all you want, and they need to feel it in their heart that now's the time.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I started and then I stopped, and then I started and I stopped. I hadn't gotten to that point that, even though I had kind of started, that, okay, I need to fully commit myself to this. One of the things that really, I could see, I could see disappointment in Cami, when I deal with the kids with something, or when I would get pissed off in traffic, or I don't know, the restaurant took too long or something. I could start to see her disappointment, because she is just not like that. And the crazy part is, I wasn't raised with impatient people. My mom and dad were not. They just weren't. They were incredible people. I'm so lucky to have my parents. And somehow this all manifested itself. And so I could see this disappointment, and in it, I just was disappointed in myself, disappointed in the way I did a lot of things, really. I'm 48, 50 years old, and I'm still smashing my golf club on the ground. Who the hell cares, right? You can still, I love golf. There's nothing I do that gives me more athletic juice than that, because it's me against the course. I don't care what the other guys do, play good, play bad, doesn't matter to me. I love it. But I'm like, why am I I'm an amateur, even though I think I'm half decent. Why am I angry? I should come back from the course wow, that was awesome. So all of those things started to kind of build themselves up, and it became more of the inspiration to start was my disappointment in myself. And I just said to myself that I got to find a way. I got to find a way. And I was kind of looking and kind of listening, but kind of not, because one of the most difficult parts of it all is when you get to that point and you go brush your teeth and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, I don't fucking like this. I don't like this. And people see my career, and then my second career, and I'm married to a wonderful woman who's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and she's a trailblazer, and I've got 4 healthy boys. What could possibly be wrong? Well, there was. There was. I look back sometimes, guys, and I'm like, I can't believe it. What the hell was I thinking? And part of it is you just don't think. You just, the guy that wrote the article, Bruce Arthur, he had this phrase, and I was like, oh my God, Bruce, I'm going to steal that. And he said, it's like I was wound up as a child by just my chemistry, because again, it wasn't my parents. My dad never skated. He just came to the games. He was the most supportive guy ever. And Mom never thought I played a bad game, ever. Oh, good game, Raymond. I'd be like, Mom, I was -3. Jeez. She's like, oh, but you played hard. I was like, okay, thanks. That was my upbringing. So Bruce Arthur said it was like I was wound up as a ball as a kid and just let go. And eventually, the roll ran out.
Yeah.
And, it ran out in my 50s. And I was like, like, like that kinetic energy that I was like this all the time.
Yeah,
And,
but some people don't even it just keeps going, right? They never have that like self-realization process, and I think it's really cool, and I love how like you're sharing it with other people, which kind of like leads to my next question of like, have you had conversations now that you've been open with this process with people around you, or like loved ones, or even people in the media world, ex-players, whatever it was, saying like they've had this same sort of process going on in their head where they might want to start like being a little more true to themselves, and kind of like same process that you went through? Like, have you found like your walls have come down and you're open to those conversations, or people want to have those conversations with you?
Overwhelming. Yeah. Since then, I had honestly, first of all, I had no intention of the article to be like that. I just thought I was talking about the end of my time at TSN and why I was transitioning. And then all of a sudden it just like came out like that. Yeah. Like, and so when I finished doing the interview, I said to Cami, we're going to bed, and I was like, man, I don't know how that's going to turn out. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel kind of pretty exposed here, and like, so the article comes out, and, I see it online. And so when the article comes out, that's the first time I've seen it, right? Like I'm reading the article as because I had just done the interview. Bruce didn't send me an advance copy or anything. He just, that's not how it's done. So I start reading it, and I'm like, geez, there's a lot of stuff there. and so first part of the day, didn't really hear much. And then it was like a door opened, and it was just like, I'm telling you, literally overwhelming number of people reaching out, many of them asking if I was okay.
Yeah.
And then, me saying, no, this is great. This is what, many, I'm really surprised with people saying, well, good for you. Congratulations. And like, I wasn't ready for that either. I think I know a lot of people have and it's a little bit frustrating, not frustrating. It's a little bit, makes me uneasy, I guess. People have an image of what they think I am or how they think I am. And it was either because I slashed a lot of people, or then I moved into this career where honestly, like, being opinionated is just me. It's just like, I'm not trying. It is a bit of a character, right? You're on TV. They got the What's Buggin' Ray thing and all that. But that's not the fully formed picture. And so I think a lot of people were quite surprised.
Yeah.
Because as they know me, they don't know me like that. Just when it all came out, I just wasn't prepared. It's really kind of cool to have people say, geez, I've been thinking of that myself. I met with a guy I play golf with yesterday. We went for coffee, and he's kind of winding down his career, and he asked, like, what were the steps you took? And I was like, oh, like, to hear that it actually had an impact, that was not my intention. Yeah. Which is, it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat that could be.
Yeah, that's what I'll quickly, it's not a question, but just that's what I meant when I said, like, just the article was very relatable. Like, I know obviously there's a big age gap between us, but like, sometimes you get into this mindset where like, I'm thinking about, like, I'm dragging my family around like 5 different teams and 5 different years. And it's like 1-year contracts, a lack of stability. And like, so now I'm not really playing much. And it's just kind of like, there's all these things that go through my head. Like, am I good enough? Like, all these things. And it's like, to know that the option's there to stop. Not saying I want to, but to know that option's there makes me at ease. and then makes me kind of look back onto why I'm playing. And it's because I love going to the rink. I love being around the guys. When the game comes, I love playing. I love the competition. But I think like it just shows a lot of people too, like you don't have to, especially in sports, it's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy it. You grew up loving it. To know you don't have to be doing it, you get to do it. I think that's kind of one of the things that showed me. So it was a good reflection piece for me to sort of like let's keep going. Let's have fun with this because my career is only so long. And I think a lot of other athletes relate to that. Like you get guys joking around like the NHL is the never happy league and like guys are kind of like grumpy sometimes. And I think like moments like this for me, it puts things into perspective, and then I can take that energy and bring it to the rink with me and share that with the other guys. So,
you also have, of course I'm biased, but you also have, Riley, in Buffalo, something that other players don't have. And that's my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
the way that he is one of the most incredible people I've ever come across. He really is. And he cares for his players. He cares if they're okay. He gives each player a way to be successful, both
100%.
on and off the ice. And so I hope that's what leadership becomes. I hope this isn't an outlier. I think this is the way you treat people. Like that's, I look at Donnie and so my brother-in-law, for those that don't know, is Cammie's brother. And he's gone through a hell of a lot in his life. He had cancer. He was probably going to be an NHL coach at a very young age. He got sick. Fortunately, he's healthy, but he went away from coaching. He was scouting. He was in player development. Then he got back. The real juice for Don is to coach. And then he was an assistant coach. And then, he's an assistant in Buffalo. And then he gets an interim tag. And the Sabres are in great hands. But one of the reasons is it's the whole picture of what we're talking about, is that it can't just be the job. It has to be more. And it's not just athletics. It's if you don't like the job that you're doing, you've got to find something you can hang on to in that job that brings you some joy.
Yeah.
Find something, whatever it is, small piece, just something you look forward to on the day. And then you can build and you can find how to grow that inside you. Like, look, my job's great. The travel stinks. It's brutal. I travel, when I was doing both jobs and doing the World Juniors plus the World Championships, I was flying 70,000 miles a year. What am I doing? That part stinks. But there's no job that everything's perfect. There's not one.
Yeah.
And so the balance part, back to that's critical in anything. Like you're gonna quit, Riley, when you don't have fun anymore. Yeah. You're gonna go, you know what? I've had it. I can't put the work in to satisfy myself. And you'll go, you know what? It's not right. Yeah. That'll comes to everybody at some point.
You know what's crazy is, I obviously didn't play in the NHL, but when I left Humboldt after I recovered from all my injuries, my text to my parents was, I'm just not having fun anymore. And I think that is so relatable, because once you lose that fun aspect, once you lose that enjoyment of doing what you're doing, it's so hard to get it back.
So Tyler, just think of all the things you went through to even get your feet back on the ice, which was probably, as you were going through your recovery, that was the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get there and you're like, oh. It's not always what you picture. Like I pictured doing games, doing this schedule, and then I got to this schedule and I'm like, oh, I don't like this. What can I do about it? And it took me a long time to unspool it. But I got to a point and I was like, oh, I've got this, and I'm doing the EA game, and which is 20 hours a month in a sound booth, and I'm doing the Leafs, and I'm doing the World Junior, and I'm doing the World Championship. Then I got the EA or the the ESPN gig, and you're like, it's just what you say. If you lose the fun, you've got to find the fun in it, because that's the engine.
Yeah. I want to. I mean, I love this already, but I want to definitely go back to your article and just the effect afterwards. I want to share a quote that my therapist shared actually, and she said, I think I've said this multiple times, like my many quotes, but your spotlight can really be the light at the end of other people's tunnels. And I think for you especially, it's interesting because I mean, so many people have grown up with you, around Christmas time, it's you, it's the gang at the World Juniors. It's everybody thinks they just know you. And I think after people read this article and I can actually take a step back in their own lives and be like, wow, like Ray Ferraro has been, my Christmas time for how many years, and he's able to come out and do this. I want to touch on how impactful your relationship started to become, and how much more appreciation you had for the conversations that you were having. I literally just got a message from a gentleman that I used to play against in junior A hockey, played in Flin Flon a little bit. I got a message from him and said, I've been struggling with my mental health and addiction for the past couple of years. And I just want to say, what you share and what you're doing has really helped me ask for help. And I think receiving something like that and receiving those messages, like you've probably received a couple over the, this last little bit, it's hard because once again, you kind of have to find a balance where it's like, okay, I want to be able to do everything I can for this person, but I also know that, I'm still trying to take these steps as well. But I want to just, how much more appreciation, I guess, do you have for the relationship with yourself, but also just the relationships that you have with your loved ones and the people around you and the conversations you're having?
Well, okay. One of the things I've never even really internalized it. I never thought about it, but it's true, is that feeling that you're enough is a hard thing.
Yeah.
Because your own imperfections better than anybody else. You might be able to cloud them over so other people don't notice, but And so there's a portion of that for me that was like, I'm not, I guess I'm on TV. I guess, I guess I do the games. But it never felt like I was never really happy with myself. Like I hated a large part of my personality that I know people found funny. And it was, I mean, it is, when I look at it, like I say goofy things, and some, like Landon, would often, him and his brother would just laugh at something I would say. And they're like, really, Dad, do you really feel like that? And I'd be like, no, not really. So there was that not feeling enough thing was a real problem. And so once I got to this point, you say like the impact on my relationships, I wanted to have a better relationship with Matt and Landon. The little guys, I can do math, like Reese is 12. I'm 58. I can do math. Yeah. Landon and Matt are in their 30s already. And so I can't say, oh, I'll fix this in 5 years. I don't want my sons to be worried about my temper. I don't want them to go, geez, Dad's not there for us because he's always traveling. I don't want that. I don't want to have a pretty good marriage, because that Cammie was putting more into the marriage than I was putting into it. And even though I thought, I'm like, oh, I'm traveling and working and I come home and I'm doing, yeah, so what? Nobody cares. If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I'm going to do it, like she deserved better than what I was able to give. And so all those things became part of the drive to be better. And we've been married 18 years and it never been better. Yeah. It's never been better. And it's not because she got better. Honestly, I said in the article, she's the nicest person I'll ever meet. She's amazing. And I'm really lucky. But she wasn't getting the same thing back. And so all that stuff that I see changing now, like I can't believe when I do something now and I'll think about it and I'm like, oh, that just came naturally. you know, like I didn't have to think about whatever it was. It just happened. And so the more the habit becomes ingrained, the more the thinking of gratitude, thinking of, and in a way, I hate talking about all this stuff in these terms because it seems so out of a book or new agey.
Oh.
And sometimes I even hate saying it, but it's fact.
Yeah.
It is the energy, the trying to find something positive, trying to, like, I rarely read anything about politics because the angst it gives me, I just can't take it anymore. I'm like, I pay attention. I know what's going on. But I can't be in an argument all the time about things that you can't change or like, what are you doing? And so all those things that come in, and then they get put into this basket of, of gratitude and empathy and people, you can almost see some people going, yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's honestly, it has changed the meditation, having some faith, like faith in something bigger than me, gratitude, empathy, living with good intent. It's changed my outlook. It's changed my life.
Yeah. We get that sort of, even during our podcast episodes, sometimes like you feel awkward talking about those kinds of things just because like, I guess it still comes back to like the male stigma and even being in sports, like the locker room topics are slowly changing. But like, if you just start talking about like your faith and meditation, like the topics that I love, it's just sometimes if it's the wrong guy, you get looked at as being as a bit of a weirdo, but it's also changing for sure, especially with us, with our team. And I think it's, like you said, kind of the culture that has been created and a lot of the personalities we have in the locker room. But Ty, do you got anything else?
I was just going to say about the locker room stuff, like, people that have never been in it, a locker room, they seem surprised that everybody doesn't get along in there.
Yeah.
And that everything's not like, well, why don't you guys just talk about it? And like, man, it's 25 guys. If you put 25 random people in a room, there's no way they're going to agree all the time. Like just go pick 25 people off the street. How are they going to agree? Go get, and even if that's a bad example, go get 25 accountants or 25 lawyers or 25 nurses. They're not going to agree on everything. No chance. And so but if the conversation changes, and of course I'm not in it like you are right now, is that if the conversations are slowly changing, then the ball's slowly starting to roll and the momentum will pick up. It's like, it will pick up because with the way the world is now, everybody can hear much more about it than they would in the past. If I talked to you two guys about it in the locker room, that's where it ended.
Yeah.
There was that was it. It was like, where else are you going to go? Well, now you can read about it on a social media platform, or, you can hear about it from another guy on a team that somebody might send you a text. Well, back then you were like, there was nobody to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to touch on one last thing. I got one fun question afterwards, but we just had our boy Chris Johnston on as well, and we it's crazy because he's doing, I think, 900 straight days of running. You're doing 399 straight days of meditation. I mean,
by the way,
profound.
the running, I don't know what he's doing. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's actually mind blowing, but he definitely. He was very adamant on how much, COVID obviously was a very terrible thing for a lot of people, but for himself and for yourself, obviously there was a lot of amazing changes that came out of it. This is what we didn't touch on the article enough. I mean, there were so many amazing quotes in it, and there was so much stuff that, it was just fascinating to read. But one of my favorite quotes was, and Ferrero slowed down. He breathed, his patience grew, his empathy, his sense of being being where he was. And he also, I mean, another quote was, but as Granato puts it, the family loved going nowhere together. I mean, even just hearing that back, loved going nowhere together. You've been in this routine for, like you said, how many years? And now you're in a place where it's like, I can sit down and I can enjoy being present with my family and play a board game. How did this impact you? How does this continually impact you, being able to, not judge, exactly where you're at, but just trust that where you're at is where you're supposed to be. And this is happening for a reason.
Well, okay, so, we all lived the same life for 2 years or for a year anyway. Like, you wake up, there's nowhere to go. You can't go anywhere. If it was a day to go get groceries, one of us would go get groceries. That's when you were still washing your groceries before you brought them into the house. So we had a table outside in the garage, and you'd come. Whoever got the groceries would be swiping everything off, and the other person would be bringing it in, and then we'd sit and talk for an hour and a half, and then about an important thing or a non-important thing, and then the kids would be, we tried to, the homeschooling was, I don't know how that was, that was not so great. But then we'd be like, okay, we got a basketball hoop in the backyard. Let's go shoot hoops. Well, pretty soon you're out there for 90 minutes. Not even really shooting hoops. You're just kind of talking while you're playing. People never have time to do that. We certainly never had time to do that because I was never home for it. And so it became really we were lucky, right? Because, we had good health. We had a place to stay. People had enough space that you're not sitting on each other's feet. And it was really a springboard into the way it's become now. You guys heard Ollie, so we get it as if there wasn't enough to do. We get a puppy at this, during COVID, like 8 billion other people. And so Cammy would say, I'm going to go walk the dog. And it never occurred to me that the right thing to say was not, oh, you want me to come? She's going to go walk the dog. I would just go. And then we talked for another hour.
Yeah.
Well, before I might've said, okay, yeah, I'll see you when you get back. Right. So just little things like that. Every connection seemed easier to make because there was no one else to make a connection to. Where were you going to go? What were you going to do? Nothing. And so her quote was perfect. We loved going nowhere together. Now, when we started to go somewhere, that was nice too. But in the meantime, we became a stronger family unit. There is zero question. And I'm of the terrible spot that we lived for 2 years, and there'll still be ramifications for a long, long, long time. We really had some great stuff come out of it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. It's like that. I don't know if you've ever heard the song "Going Nowhere Fast," but it's exactly like that. It's so refreshing sometimes to have nowhere to go and just be able to have those little, sometimes meaningless, sometimes meaningful conversations that just springboard into, that next step or that next conversation or that next experience or next adventure, whatever it may be. But last kind of question for me, I hope you'll stay on after we kind of say our goodbyes and shoot the shit a little bit more because, Ray, I'm fascinated by you, and I've always been a fan. But
thank you.
Just as a young hockey fan, one of the most, this is probably hard, and I want to relate it to just World Juniors because you've done so many incredible World Juniors, like 2008 or whatever it is. But is there one hockey event memory that just will forever be ingrained in your brain as one of the most amazing things that you've ever experienced?
Okay, as a player, I can think of two right away. One was the 1993 playoffs. I'm with the Islanders. We make it on the last day of the regular season. Somehow we beat Washington in the first round. I don't even, So now we're playing Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's won the Cup 2 years in a row. They finished the regular season with a 17-game winning streak. They run over New Jersey in the first round 4-1, and then we're playing them. Like we have no chance. If you looked at the two rosters it was just not right. Anyway, we get to Game 7. I'm having an amazing playoff. We get to overtime, and we get a 2-on-1, and I set up David Volek, and we score. David scores. I will never forget how quiet the arena in Pittsburgh got. I'm at the bottom of the pile with David. Everybody's jumping on us, and I can hear Glenn Healy, our goalie, coming down the ice yelling. I can hear him in the building. It's that quiet.
It's like
and I'm
the
like,
bubble.
oh, here comes. Yeah, I'm like, oh, here comes Heels. And he's, yes, exactly. You're like, oh, that was the first one. The second was I was at the World Championships in 1996, and we got to the semifinals. We get to a shootout against Russia. Their first player scored. Our first 4 missed. Their next 4 missed after their first score. So I'm 5th shooter. And as I'm going over the boards, Marty Brodeur was backing up Curtis Joseph. How about that for goalie pair? And Marty says, he goes, they called me Rat Boy. And he goes, hey, Rat Boy, I don't think your move can work here. And I'm not sure. I only got one move. And so I go in, I fake to my forehand, go to the backhand, score. We get to the final. Like, the building was shaking.
Who was in that for Russia?
A guy named Andrei Trefilov. He played in the NHL and good goalie. And well, I like to say he was a good goalie anyway. And so the people, as we got on the bus after, like the wives and other players were there, they're like, it was so loud. What were you thinking? And I will never forget that I didn't hear a thing. Nothing. Not one sound. And so that's from playing as a broadcaster. Jaromir Jagr's last international tournament was in Prague. And we were doing the World Championships. And he was having an amazing tournament. And they have this saying, I don't know what it is in Czech, but basically they start jumping up and down. And the saying is, if you're not jumping, you're not Czech. And the building was shaking. Like, it was literally moving. And I will never forget how much love and admiration these people had for Jagr. It was amazing.
Wow.
That's cool.
Jeez. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can only imagine the list just goes on and on. But yeah, like I said, Ray, we'll chat for a couple minutes after, but we just wanted to truly thank you for your time, for your empathy, your vulnerability, your compassion, and just being able to be now just what you are, and in the hockey community especially. I think it's touched a lot of lives, and it's touched a lot of lives that you probably don't even know that it's touched. So yeah, from the bottom of our hearts, I mean, we have so much appreciation for what you're doing, and yeah.
Thank you very much. That was great.
We
say hi to your dad, eh?
Yeah, we got to give Lando a shout out too, because he hooked us up, and I know I got a little quote from him saying how happy he was. I think, are you going down to Germany soon?
Yeah, I think, I'm going the 22nd, and I'm sure him and Emily are really excited I'm going there, because that means they get a couple of dinners. And
yeah, no, he said he was really proud of you, and he said selfishly he's excited that you get to come down to Germany. So I know that'll be a fun trip. So. No, Lando's great. Obviously a good friend of mine. So, Ray, thank you very much. And yeah, it was great.
Well, thanks a lot, guys.